So that gets us to superintendent's report, and I'll just turn that over to Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, members of our community. We want to thank you so much, and it's great to honor our school counselors. As you said, they are dealing with so much in the lives of our students and staff, and we ask that question, how are the students? I think the big question is, how are our staff, specifically those counselors who take these stories home each and every day. And before she leaves, I'm going to embarrass Ms. Janice Thompson as she's walking out there, but she has been driving our buses for 40 years.
Where is she?
40 years in our community, so we thank her for that. That is a lot of mileage on those yellow buses, and we really appreciate that service. And we've always believed that all of our positions, whether it's from custodial staff or food services, transportation, school counseling, classroom teachers, assistants, paraprofessionals, all that we have, administrators, we're all part of a system. And that system also includes our community, from school board to our youngest child. And we're aligned in the three questions: the vision question of why are we here, the mission question of how we accomplish the vision, and the outcomes, the what question. And it's the feedback. It's tonight. It's that constant feedback that we get to make sure that we aligned in that. We have committed to the vision that we created. This does not come from one person, but from our organization, our faculty and staff, our employees, that said we come to District 5 to love and grow our students. And so it's under that vision that we are trying to each and every day make true. And we do that with our mission statement. And one part of our mission statement is to provide a safe and healthy work environment, a healthy learning environment for all of our students. And so with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing in terms of safety and security. And we have been tracking each and every day our COVID numbers. And I'm going to ask Mr. Holden to come forward and take us through our COVID update, please.
Over the last few weeks, we've continued to see that steady trend in the decline in the 2-week incidence rates in Lexington and Richland counties. Last week, I think it dropped 400 in one county, about 500 in the other. That still puts us above what the DHEC threshold is for a high 2-week incidence rate. But as we continue to monitor that, of course, we can't predict the future, but it does look like we're dropping steadily out of that high zone, hopefully this week or next week. But again, we can't predict what's going to happen there. Of course, we know that that is one of the key 3 factors that determines our mitigation levels in the district as well. We've seen the decline in our cases, in our reports in the school, similar to what we've seen, the decline in the community cases as well. But our mitigation levels are determined by a combination of the 2 factors, looking at the community spread, looking at the DHEC risk level, and then looking at the percent of students and staff who are impacted in our schools. So again, we're monitoring that. We do anticipate that this Wednesday we'll make some changes to the dashboard. Of course, we know with the new DHEC guidance, quarantines are going to be dropping off of that dashboard. We'll focus exclusively on the reporting of positive and isolated students. In the event that we need to go back to quarantines, we can add that statistic back. It's still in our data set. And of course, for the historical record, we'll have the information that you see here, so you can see back by day, by week, or by month, and you can still track the school information based on how it was calculated previously. But that will result in a change, just a minor change there to the dashboard and its overall display, but it won't affect how anything else is calculated or the overall configuration of that. Turn it back to Dr. Ross. Thank you, Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. And as Mr. Holden said, we received new updates from our health board, DHEC. The first one came on February the 22nd, 2022. And in that outlined the new procedures in terms of, as Mr. Holden alluded to, getting the removal of the test to stay And when we say removal, really meaning suspension of this test to stay, as well as the quarantining. Our schools, all of our schools in District 5 qualify because of we're less than 10% over these 2 weeks. And so effective tomorrow, we will suspend the contact tracing, the test to stay, and quarantining in School District 5 schools. So again, those numbers will drop off significantly. If conditions change, we still have that data set, but that has been suspended. We also received an update on Friday, February 25th, that the South Carolina Department of Education will no longer require the use of masks by students on the state-owned buses. So that's all of the buses that Mr. Wiseman here represents. That was effective immediately. So I want to thank Mr. Wiseman and his team. They were working all weekend to make that adjustment, to make sure that in operation of today, as we move 9,000 students around our community, that was in place. So we wanted to make sure that the community and the board was aware of that. So I want to pause if there are any questions for Mr. Holden or the administration regarding the new COVID updates.
Any questions? I see, oh, Ms. Moore.
I do have one question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you? We had approved a couple of sessions back for new permanent subs to be helping to take the caseloads off the nurses. What will happen with those positions? Will they continue to be in the schools?
Great question. So these the subs were used in the term of what we call surge protectors, meaning that they had dualities, and we renegotiated with ESS, the sub provider, to allow these additional duties in the health room, giving us the flexibility to, when the surges were down, that they would go back to covering classes. So because we have that flexibility, they stay within our buildings and they move from helping in the nurses station or the health rooms to going back to covering classes. I think just kind of full disclosure, we did bring in some full-time contract tracers, which will now, they will pivot their role. I believe Dr. Harris is about 6 of those in the district. Seven. To help us on backlogs of health information in the health room.
Any others?
And we don't pay for those either, so that's good.
Is that good, Ms. Moore? Good. Any other questions on that? Thank you.
All right.
Have a lot.
So we're going to move on in the superintendent's report to talk about, in our mission, the notion of safety and security. And at our last board meeting, I had notified the school board that I was going to host a virtual community forum for the Irmo community after the incidents of the walkout and safety concerns at Irmo High School. At the virtual town hall, which hosted 671 members of our community, we talked about 3 agenda items. Kind of the storyline coming from the walkout was about safety and security. However, upon closer reflection and talking to some of the organizers of the walkout, the concern was about sexual harassment in schools and how we would address it, as well as safety and security issues. And then we wanted to talk about things that we could do that would be sustainable in terms of not allowing these things to happen again. What are some sustainable solutions in terms of reducing negative behavior and improving academic achievement? So all of these things were addressed in that town hall. I want to thank our communications team, specifically Laura McElveen. She took 399 questions and responses and tried to, and comments to help facilitate that in that hour and a half. In terms of sexual harassment, I will continue to notify not only our community, but our board and our staff, our principals, about how we address any form of discrimination, which includes that on sexual harassment or sexual misconduct. through Title IX. Sometimes we think about Title IX in terms of athletics, but it also covers anti-discrimination. And we have two Title IX coordinators in our district. For our employees, all of that is handled by our Chief of Human Resource Officer, Dr. Turner, and for our students, our Student Services Officer, Ms. Kelly Brown. And so I want to thank Ms. Brown, meeting at the school with the students to address those concerns, to do those investigations, and to help continue to provide training and support for our schools and staff in terms of any complaints. But I want to just make people aware that we do have board policies regarding these for employees and students, and it was important to let the community know just what District 5 does in its stance when we hear any concern. So we wanted to make sure that any voice that was brought forth that day was heard, and we wanted to address those students' concerns. In terms of providing a safe and secure learning environment, I think it starts with the hallways. When the bell rings, where are the students? Are they accounted for? And in high schools, if you've been in the east wing of Irmo High School, it's like a labyrinth. You can kind of get turned around and lost in there. And so we wanted to make sure that we had processes and procedures, not just at Irmo High School, but in all our schools. We met with the, as you may remember, we went virtual learning for 2 days. The district administration came in, met with the administration, the teachers, and we created a few norms that we would create. The first one that they hear all the time in those halls is in class or hall pass. And this is accountability. So every teacher has the same type of hall pass, and students are held account to be either in class or accounted for when they're in the hallways. We have, I want to thank Dr. Harris and his safety team for helping us with increased presence. I think all of our safety officers were there at one point walking through the halls just to build these norms. We have installed additional safety cameras there. We're not going to go too much into detail of how many and where they are and what they cover, but it's interesting enough, a hat or a hood could defeat the camera. And so we want to ID every student. So there was a very clear issue on dealing with hats and hoods in the building. I would take this opportunity to say something. When you look at why behind behaviors, a lot of it was because students didn't have money for a haircut. And so we have been working with some local barbers. Mr. Cannon, in fact, was helping me out with getting barbers who are going to volunteer to come in and give kids haircuts. They won't wear the hoods and the hats if we kind of meet those needs. So we're learning a lot. We making very systematic adjustments in terms of how we write referrals, particularly at this school, in terms of failure to obey a staff member. That staff members must have control of their classrooms, and we were reinforcing that. Enforcing the tolerance policy, and again, having increased supervision and security presence. So when you see increased, whether it's additional SROs, safety teams, cars out front, if there's an emergency, you will be notified through Bright Arrow. But most times, it's just increased presence that we have to reinforce the security measures that we have on campus. And we can do this at any one of our schools to reinforce how important it is that when that bell rings, that everybody's accounted for. We know who belongs on campus and who does not belong on campus. And it has been, we're very proud of what we're seeing out of the faculty, staff, and students. Ms. Fay, who handles the cafeteria at Irmo High School, we just call her Fay. I know she has a last name, but Ms. Fay was so proud of the students that she made over 1,300 cookies for them last Friday with hearts on them, just to let the students know at Irmo High School how much she loves and appreciates them stepping up and making the safety adjustments. In terms of discipline, I have showed this graphic about how we mitigate discipline in schools. Of the 399 questions and concerns at that, some of the questions are, what do you do with students who threaten others? And we kind of consider that as red. Those are the students who need district interventions. These are the arrests, the suspensions, the expulsions. These are things that are, they're not going to be tolerated. You're not going to be allowed to hurt another student at school. However, we're seeing a lot of reds in our schools that we have students who are going unaddressed in what we call the orange. Traditionally, assistant principals and principals will deal with students there. Green are the students that do exactly what they need to do. Yellow are the students who need a teacher to intervene, and they'll do what they need to do. But orange are those students that when the teacher intervenes, the behavior still does not improve, yet it didn't rise to the level that we have that intense focus from the principal and the assistant principal. As a result, we needed to create another option, something that would stop students from getting to that red level. We call that program the Nest, and that was also instituted. And I can't thank the Irmo High School administration and teachers. They were able to get this program up and running with, I think, all of our chiefs' help, from staffing to finance to academics to student services and operations, to get this program up and running within 72 hours. And the goal is you have to believe that there are students in bad situations before you say there are bad students. And if you can address the situations, then maybe you can prevent them from going to red. And that's what the vision of this is to look at meeting those needs that the students have within the traditional school setting so that we can get them back to the yellow and back to the green. And that's what the mission of the Nest is. And we have 3 goals: increase that instructional time, improve communication and problem solving, and have alternatives before they get to suspension and expulsion. And so that's what we were able to create. I want to thank the Irmo community. They really stood behind this and rallied behind it. We had a group of parents who decided that they were going to help decorate the Nest over the weekend and came in and used their own money, own time to create a very welcoming environment for our students. Within about 2 weeks of its operations, Ms. Taylor asked some news reporters to come in and visit the Nest, and we saw we had a lot of great coverage of the students there. But what I want to report back, which I'm very excited about, is that discipline referrals at Irmo High School are down 33% since the opening of the Nest. And I think there's great promise. Now, not all stories kind of reported out positive of the Nest. One student was quoted, which in his perspective, one student was quoted by saying, "Honestly, it does make me feel singled out. There should be more things done to help us kids, but mainly, Nest has been a good opportunity for me. It's helped improve my grades academically and everything, and my behavior," she said. Now, I asked our team, asked the English teacher, what's the main idea of this child's statement? And according to Kelsey Sanchez, the main idea is, it does make me feel singled out. Now, I believe the main idea is right after she says mainly. Nest has been a good opportunity for me. I bring this to light because I think it's important for us to realize that there is a bad news bias, specifically in our country. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, their report in November 2020, 91% of the stories by U.S. major media outlets are negative in tone. This is analysis over 20,000 stories, news stories from major outlets all over the world, whereas 54% of non-U.S. Major sources report negative, 65% of scientific journals report negative, but 91% of major news outlets. So I was very confused on how a main idea that the nest was a good opportunity was turned into, it does make me feel singled out. I asked Bristol Marchant for his click-through data because I just wanted to see how that fares out for us. 91%. And when I think about this notion of bad children versus bad situations, this affects our district as well. The majority, as they report in this study, of items that are shared and commented on are negative news, are bad stories. When you have the option of clicking on 3 stories, LR5 good, LR5 neutral, LR5 bad, we click first on LR5 bad. It's almost like we need 90 positive stories to outweigh 1 negative story. And I think is the most we can do to recognize that we contribute to this bias. It's what we click on. It's what's being offered up to us and that we select. But there are plenty of good stories out there. There are plenty of good news in District 5. And we have to work in overdrive to counter this negative bias. So I'm going to work very hard with our team to put our students and our community in a light. I have kind of separated myself from any outlet, whether it's social media or regular media, that has this bad news bias, and put myself in a place where we're looking at a more balanced approach that our kids and our community can live in, an approach that lets them know that everything's not bad, that they go to an amazing school and an amazing school district. And if any child needs to hear more positive bias about their school, it is the students at Irmo High School. So I thank those parents and those community members who have committed to doing a positive news bias for their school and counter to this negative news bias that exists in the community. With that, before I move on to our monthly financials, I'll take any questions about safety and security in our schools.
Okay. Any questions or any comments? That was a really good article, well, not article, but the TV presentation from Irmo was exciting. Who's got a hand up? Is that a?
She's got one. I was trying to let you know.
Oh, okay, Miss Moore, certainly.
What percentage are we currently at with capacity for the nest?
Ms. Miller?
I'm sorry, I don't have that for you right now. I know that we have had some students meet their benchmark, so to speak, and move out of that. So I can get that information for you. I know we were scheduled to start at 58, and I know that we're down from that. I don't want to give a number to guess, but I can get you that information.
Okay.
We're prepared to go as high as 70, but we're at 58 and dropping.
Thank you. Anybody else? Did I not see a hand? All
All right. At this time, we'll have our financial report, our monthly financial report by our CFO, Marty Rawls.
All right, Madam Chair, Dr. Ross, members of the board, I am happy to present the monthly report for the month ending December 31st. I've added to this report the comparative data from the same time last year, actual numbers line by line. So you can see that we're looking at local sources having received $31 million this year to date, and that we were at $28,500,000 last year for local sources. And these would be all of our state sources and other financing sources, whereas as of 12/31, we were at 44.5% collected this year versus 41.41% the same time last year. Any questions on the revenues?
Ms.
I have
Huddle.
one question. On the state sources, The homestead exemption, Tier 3 is down. Is that just timing compared to last year? Or is it up? It's up compared to last year.
Which one was that? I'm sorry.
I think it's homestead exemption, Tier 3. It's 10 million this year, and it was 6.4, and I know it's going to go up some, but
Probably
it's
would
some
have
of
been a
that
timing
timing.
issue. It's about 3 million a month, so it was probably 1 month that was posted at a different time period.
Any others? Thank you.
All right, our expenditures, same scenario. We are at 42.5% this year versus 40.7% last year, and you can see line by line where we are. Remember that last year we had not given the step at this point in time. We did that at the end of the year, so that would account for a good bit of the difference that you're seeing here. Next report, you had requested a capital funds analysis. This is all of the capital project improvement funds that are still open. You can see that we have the budget versus the expenditures. We have a good bit encumbered and a good bit committed. This goes back to the $3.5 million that you all budgeted and committed earlier this school year, plus the commitments from the capital projects fund for the 21-22 that was issued last year this same time. The $391,000 that you see uncommitted, that is really contingency in that program because there's a lot of projects that have not been completed in the most recent program. So once those projects are completed and there are any funds left over, we would come back to you to rebudget those funds as well. But there's minor differences in the other years, and it's just where we may have budgeted $15,000 and they spent $14,900. It's very minor differences, but whatever is remaining, we'll be back to you to rebudget those funds once projects are completed. Any questions on the capital funds? All right, I wanted to go into a little bit about the new education funding model. Proviso 1.3 was introduced by Representative Whitmire last week. I want to say it was on Thursday. It was approved through the House Ways and Means Full Committee, so it is part of the budget that is being sent to the House for deliberations. So I wanted to go through the details of this and so you can understand how it affects District 5. Many of you who went to the School Boards Association saw these very same slides. I actually copied a lot of the information off the slide presentations that you may have seen there, but I did want to personalize some of it for our district. Like I said, this was the governor's funding model. It was introduced by Governor McMaster earlier this year. Frank Rainwater with South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs has put a lot of this information together. A couple of the most notable changes is the governor had requested a $2,000 increase for state minimum teacher salary for the bachelors with 0 years, would have put them at $38,000. House Ways and Means approved $40,000. Again, that is just the state minimum salary. Any local portion that the district had would be on top of that. The changes include previously the allocations were 70% state funds, 30% local funds. It's moving to 75-25. The statewide student-teacher ratio is 11.7 students per teacher. And I want to clarify the word teacher. It's not just referring to classroom teachers. It also includes counselors. It includes psychologists. It includes OT/PT. There are several positions that are included in this, so I don't want everyone to think that their class size is going to be 11.7 students per class. It's a little bit more involved than just per class, so just so everyone understands that. They are basing the average salary for teachers at $69,153, and that is a master's plus 12 years. That is an average of the teacher salary schedule. And there were some questions about the district's index of tax-paying ability. That comes from the South Carolina Department of Revenue. Our index of tax-paying ability for this coming year is 1.836%. and that is up from last year. It was 1.8, I think it was 29%, so it's up just a nominal amount from last year. Any questions on this slide? One thing that was mentioned by a CFO in another district is they really are focusing on funding people, not programs now. So that's a big, a little bit of a change from the way it has been in the past. They've changed a lot of the weightings for weighted pupil units, and we'll get into that on future slides. So this is a long, involved formula, and this is looking at FY 19-20 data. I show you all this, and I want you to see this, but I'm going to show you actual data for this year coming up. And there should be a copy of it at your places because we were not complete with it whenever this was sent to you all. Like we talked about, the local share deals with the index of tax-paying ability. That's the big part for our district. What that compares is the assessed values of the properties in our district as compared to the assessed values in the property of the whole state. What portion of District 5 is part of the entire state for assessed property values? This is the long, involved slide, and it's a lot of information here, and I don't want you to get really bogged down in the weeds of it. I really would like to direct your attention toward the bottom part where it starts at the $99,248,317. With all the calculations above, that is what the district's total aid to classrooms would be. That is the state share and the local share. When you go through the calculations, the local share comes out at the $20,668,558, and the state share is the balance, the $78,578,759. That is based on the weighted pupil units of our district on the 45th day compared to the statewide weighted pupil units on that same day. And that is at the new weighted pupil unit ratios. So you can see that our 21-22 state share was $82,115,520. That's where we are right now. That's, again, based on the 45th day. When you look at that, there's a $3.5 million difference there. We are one of 7 districts in this state that would experience a loss. That 7 is based on the 1920 data, not the current data. But we are in the situation where we would not receive the same amount of state share that we have in the past. For the 22-23 school year, included in the proviso is a hold harmless agreement. I don't have to remind you, provisos are one-year deals. There is no guarantee or understanding or anything for year 23-24. But for 22-23, we will not receive less. There again, this is going to be adjusted as of the 135th day, so that $82 million may change a little bit based on enrollment on the 135th day, but we will not receive less than what we receive for the state share for this current school year. And when you look at that $3.5 million, that represents approximately 12 mills, and the impact on $100,000 of investment property would be $72 a year. Any questions on this slide? It's a lot of information here.
Ms. Hutt.
So this allocation, the estimated allocation, also doesn't take into the effect the step increases, right? So we're getting less money, but yet we're going to have to fund more, correct?
This would cover the teacher salary supplement. It has not been adjusted for that. That is the new total aid to classrooms combines a lot of line items that we have today. Part of it is the teacher salary supplement. If that were to increase, this may increase. It would really, all that's going to play into that $40,000 is included in here, that the increase in the state minimum salary schedule. But when we look at our teachers, it could be some adjustment in there.
Mr. Lovelace.
Ms. Rawls, as a result of our attending the South Carolina School Board Conference, we went to a seminar down there conducted by Ms. Debbie Elmore of the association. And after the conference, she called me and asked that we get in touch with our state representatives, which we did, Chip Huggins and Representative Nathan Ballantyne. And what they were saying was that that hold harmless agreement is repetitive money, and they were talking about that we would basically, if not without the hold harmless agreement, that we would be down about $4.6 million was their estimate at the time.
That was based on the 1920 enrollment data, yes, sir.
I mean, and like you said, this formula is very hard to follow, but I think I followed it anyway. So we then worked tirelessly. I think it was last Wednesday or something. But anyway, they were meeting that afternoon with the South Carolina House Ways and Means Committee, and the chair of the committee agreed that since it was repetitive money, that the hold harmless agreement would go forth in future years. Now, I don't know that I don't know enough about the mechanisms of the workings of the State House of Representatives, but I know that our representatives know that, and they were advised that how much of, I mean, this would be disastrous for us, because people don't really know this, but with Act 388, there's a limit on the amount of millage you can raise. And so if you're already bumping your head on the limit, which we try not to as this board, we're trying to give the taxpayers a break. But if we're down $4.6 million per year, then it won't be long until our general fund is depleted. So I want to give kudos to the people that are trying to help us here. But that was the information, the latest information that I had. So just wanted to pass that along to everybody.
They may do some amendments on the House floor. Right now, it's written in the proviso, but yes, sir, they could certainly amend that on the House floor. And then it still has to go through the Senate. There will be some adjustments. This is not final. It's just where we are today. Any other questions?
Ms. Huddle?
Were you going to show the weighted pupil units? I didn't know if you had that in here.
I do not. What I can tell you is that all students get one. All students with disabilities are at 2.6, where they were at, I think, 1.57 up to about 2.5, 2.6. So that is a gain. They took away the add-on weighting for dual credit, but they increased pupils in poverty and they increased ESOL.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think they decreased the CATE, the technology.
They did. That's a
from
1.0 now.
1.3 to 1.
Yes.
So I think that was a major impact on
Major
us,
hit.
wasn't it?
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
I think we have one of the highest percentages of weighted pupil units of any district in a CATE program.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's what I thought.
When you look at if you look on this, our weighted pupil units on the 45th day, right about the middle of the screen, 23,000. Our head count was about 16,700, and I'm looking at K-12, not pre-K. So K-12 was about 16,700, and our weighted pupil units were 23,000. Statewide was that $1 million number there. So we're about 2.2% of the state in weighted pupil units. Again, ma'am?
Ms. Rawls, I'm interested in, will that make a big difference, or do you have an opinion of whether they go by people versus programs? That's interesting to me as a teacher.
You know, I think they're trying to come up with a universal plan that benefits all districts. You know, I think that we have in our district here programs that far outweigh what a lot of districts have access to. So I can't say one way or another. I think they're really just trying to come up with giving every county the same opportunity. How you use the opportunity is the difference.
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense, because some districts have so many more programs.
You mentioned the mill cap, Mr. Lovelace. This year, our CPI statewide is about 4.7%, and it's not been that high since I've been looking at the mill cap calculations. We do have some rollback, look back actually, that we could look back. So could it happen? Yes, 12 mills could happen, but I'm not recommending that by any stretch. I'm just saying legally, I think there would be mills available to use if that were the wish of the board. But I just wanted to offer that up. This is the numbers you were referring to. This is off the presentation that you all saw looking at the 1920 data. And like I said, you can look at the weighted pupil units based old formula and new formula. So the number of weighted pupils units went up, but the percent went down when you look at that top line. Again, that's 1920 data. And then if you look at the summary change by district with the additional 100 million of allocation, it was still a $4.6 million loss. And we talked about the intent of reallocating resources. Additional funding is also being allocated from the executive budget. So there's still, like I said, early in the process, but I wanted to make sure that you all had the information as I understand it. This also model comes with a lot of accountability. They have they have actually told the Department of Education they will develop a dashboard where all expenditures are transparent by the districts, and so that's going to be, I don't know what it's going to look like, but they've given them some money to develop this dashboard, so we'll see where they come up with it. And they've also given $1.5 million to the Office of the State Inspector General to do some additional investigation on the use of districts using state funds. So those are both new to the funding model as well. If there's any questions, that's what I have as of right now. I will be at the South Carolina Association of School Business Officials Conference in 2 weeks, and hopefully we'll have more information to bring back to you at the next meeting. Frank Rainwater will be at that meeting, and as well as several individuals. I think Ms. Deb Elmore will be there, Melanie Jeanette, Sandy Smith, who all follow that very closely. So we hope to have some more information, and that will be right before the House goes to the floor for debate on this bill. So that's where we are today.
Thank you. Dr. Ross, anything on that for you? Or
No, I'll move
question?
on.
We'll move on. Sure.
I wanted to take a
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
You had something you wanted to read
Yeah,
for Dr. Ross.
Well, yes, and I wanted to take a point of personal preference. I think that's the way it's said. It is Robert's Rules of Order. But anyway, this is some good news bias, and I wanted everybody to hear this. This board believes in getting things done, and it's been a board to move on with things, to look at things, and I can say that since I've been on here, this board has done more in the 1 year than we did in the other years. But some of the things that we've accomplished $100 additional per teacher for supplies at the beginning of the year. We have a $1,000 teacher appreciation bonus. We've done $50 Fridays for employee motivation. We got additional clinical counselors, additional behavioral health counselors, additional health subcontract workers to assist with health reporting, and hopefully those folks will be able to move to some other task now that we've in the green, hopefully. First Jobs Initiative to help high school students train for jobs in the district for bus drivers, maintenance, and food service, and landscaping, to name a few, so that we can have workers with our own graduates. $2,500 teacher and employee student debt remediation program. Apprenticeship training programs, apprenticeship programs with Midlands Tech. Student internships with local employers. Guaranteed energy savings contracting, $8.1 million with ESSER funds. We're going back and making sure that we have for the future, that we're doing something with those funds to return on investment. $3.5 million in funds found and released for capital projects at practically every school in the district. Chapin High School football stadium renovations, and it's not just football, but we're talking, as we were so aptly corrected, $50 million Irmo High School East Wing new project. This right here is, to me, is one of the major things that Dr. Ross accomplished with COVID dashboard information, with Mr. Van Holden, which they personally worked to find a way to keep children in school. And then the latest item that I want to congratulate him on is the nest at Irmo High School. I think we all know that in the past years we've needed some attention, and we're finally getting it to that situation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lovelace. I certainly appreciate that. All that comes with an amazing team. So I will pass along the thoughts to all of the faculty and staff. As administrators, we really work on confidence, and so as a result, I feel that it's important to report to this board and extending that confidence in this administration, and responding to a letter dated February 8th, 2022 from State Superintendent Molly Spearman, in which it said, I or my administration and board failed to do its job to properly vetting the obscene materials in question, even after the state very publicly encouraged them to do so. And I would just like to remind our community, our board, and our teachers and staff, and especially our librarians who are watching, that we are going to follow our board policy, KEC, and KECR. And so materials can be removed from our libraries, but after a committee review team has met regarding that material. And that material comes through a citizen's request for review of educational materials completed form. And so when we get those forms, we will meet with the school level review team and the district level review team, and they go through to determine if the book has educational value, or is, and to what degree is its instructional value. And so we are following that process, and I just wanted to, as superintendent, return the confidence to the community and the board that we're going to follow that process.
Dr. Ross, I just had a question. I believe I was curious, I think at public participation, there were about 5 books mentioned, and I was just curious when they got in the library, and you sent me a recap of that, or to the entire board, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all of those books had been placed in the library over a year ago, correct?
Correct. Ms. Miller, did you have any data on that one?
Yes, sir, I do. They were all placed in a year or more, some dating back to, I believe, let's see, 2015, 16, 2010. So, yes.
I was just curious because it wasn't new. I mean, and that doesn't mean
That's
we don't need to
correct.
address them. It's just that they had been in there for quite some time.
Correct.
I have a question. And this may, again, be to Ms. Miller or someone on the staff. I think the public would like to know, how, even though it's back before you were there, 10 and 14 and 15, how do these books get there? And how can we assure the public that we're going to vet them? I mean, I know we've got the process, but I think it's for me, it's alarming how they got there. And I know we don't want to blame just, the librarians let them put it there. I'm not trying to do that. But I think without knowing how they get there, I don't think we can prevent it like we need to in the future, because we have to be on top of that. So do we have an answer for that?
Sure. Yes, ma'am. So our librarians do follow a rigorous process for selecting our books and materials that go in there. As a matter of fact, we have a policy for that, IJL, and they follow that. Back in November, we were asked to review our library policies and materials policies, and as well as our libraries. And we did that, and we felt that our policy was strong and was good. When the State Department came out with the model policy, as you'll see, because we'll bring that to our policy committee. But when they came out with that, our current policy mirrors many, many things on there. They have about 10 items that we look at, that they suggest we look at when we're considering a book for the Media Center, for the library. And in our current policy, we had 8 of those 10 word for word. Our librarians did a great job of, and they do a great job of looking at our collections, weeding our collections. The sheer number of volumes that we have, we're doing a study right now of all of our libraries and looking at that. And Follett just presented to us recently about that. But the thousands of volumes that we have in our libraries. So as we said, in many of our libraries, Ms. Huddle, you pointed out that these libraries were there before Dr. Ross was there. Many of these books were there before our librarians were there. Librarians change from year to year. So they do go through a process every year of weeding out books. That too is replicated in the model policy that we've followed for years. So they do have a process of doing that. And I do think it's important to note that part of that process is that these books have been either recommended or listed for school librarians in resources like the School Library Journal, which some of these books were in there and recommended for that. And it recommends the grade level and things of that nature.
Is that from the State Department of Education?
It is an aid or resource. That one is actually, I believe, from the, Teaching Books is actually from the State Library, but they are all vetted, so to speak, through that process. Yes, ma'am. And the School Library Journal is a very popular, it may even well be the most popular. I don't want to misspeak for our librarians. They look at a lot of different resources, but it is definitely a reputable resource that they feel like they can trust.
And we did get a definition of obscene. You want to take that on?
So, Ms. White, are you able to
Yes, I think
kind of
Ms.
lead
White's
us through the legal interpretation of obscene?
That's,
It's the Supreme Court definition of obscenity that I sent to you, Dr. Ross, in response to a FOIA request. And I want to say it's a, I'm going to walk up here for a minute. I want to say it's either a 3 or 4-part test. I don't have it in front of me. But basically what the Supreme Court said in this particular decision was that the overarching definition is whether or not it appeals to the prurient interest. Basically something that would, it doesn't have any other value other than the prurient interest, right? And then sometimes you'll hear it said, I don't know what obscenity is, but I know it when I see it. And I think that's why it's important that you have the 2-step review process that you have in your policy, because something that one person might find to be obscene in that it appeals to the prurient interest, somebody else might say, well, this is just an incidental description, but overall the message of the piece of literature is such that it's not designed to appeal to that particular interest.
can you address how our policy does fit in with the State Department of Education's?
Well, as Ms. Miller just noted, your current policy is very similar to the model policy that the State Department put out back in November. One thing that I do want to mention about your policy, because there's been some discussion about, well, can the administration or can the board remove a book from the library in the absence of a complaint? Right, if a board member or a member of the administration or a parent brings the book to the attention of the superintendent, what your policy says right now is that the piece of literature stays in the media center until the complaint process has been resolved, right, till it's gone through those 2 review committees. So given that that's what your current policy says, if the board wishes to give some discretion to the administration to remove a book because that book has come to the attention of the administration, then I would recommend that you amend that policy for that purpose, because right now it has that statement in there that at the direction of the board, it remains in the library until the complaint has, gone all the way through the 2 channels.
And Ms. White, are you saying we have to, can we amend that policy with one sweeping vote, or do we have to go back to the policy committee and bring
I
it
would say you would go
twice.
back to the policy committee, and take a look not only at that particular provision of the policy and putting something in place where a book could be removed prior to a complaint, but also looking at incorporating some of what is in the model policy that the State Department of Education put out. So I would say that if that's something that the board wants to do, go ahead and send that. I know y'all are routinely reviewing policies, and send that through the policy committee. And certainly I can assist with wording in that regard as far as being able to remove a book even in the absence of a complaint.
And so if I want to be clear on this, if we change that policy, because we've been bound by that, then we could direct the superintendent to remove a book without,
Well,
that has obscenity in it.
there needs to be some guidance provided to the administration as to when to remove a book. I caution the board about directing the administration to remove books. Okay, there are some lawsuits going around the country right now where actually students are suing school boards because a book has been removed from a library. So it's a very fine line there. Between, should it go through this review process, or can and when the administration decide to remove a book. But I think the board directing the administration to remove a book is something that I would stay away from. I think you would bring it to the superintendent's attention, put criteria that the superintendent should look at, and then leave that decision up to the administration ultimately. Because remember, y'all set policy for the district, but it's the administration who decides how to run the schools. That's not your lane.
Any other questions for Ms.?
Since the letter from the state superintendent admonished us for not following her or the state's education department's policy, which we got that. I think the letter was dated February the 8th. If we go, if the policy committee, and if we go further than what the state's recommended policy is, do they put us on an island and say, well, you didn't, because right now they're saying, you didn't follow our policy but it was, the timeline was bad because we hadn't even had the meeting yet. But if we go further than that, what does that mean? Are we without their auspices when we do that?
Well, no, because if you go back and read what was in the governor's original letter and in the State Department's original letter back in November, they talked about the ability of a school district to remove a book from the library, setting apart the complaint review process. What I'm saying is that if this board wants to be able to direct the administration to review a particular book, even in the absence of a complaint from a parent or a constituent, right, someone who lives in the school district, then that's what needs to be revised in your policy. But that's where I want us to be very careful that we don't cross the line of now all of a sudden we're putting ourselves, meaning the board and the district, in the position of being sued either by the author of a book or by students who believe that in removing the book, the district has violated their rights. And that's what I was talking about in terms of lawsuits that are going on around the country right now, because this is a hot topic, not just in this district and in South Carolina, but across the country.
Well, this is a prickly point, but I'll go back to this. Okay, so the State Department puts out its suggested guideline for policy, okay? And then the governor has something to do with some statement that you can go. What does he have to do? The guideline came out after the governor wrote his statement. Why didn't they put in the suggested guideline? I know this is a rhetorical question, but it seems to me that they should have put that in the guidelines. That if you could go further than that, then it's just confusing for the local school board because, we've been admonished for not doing the right thing. It wasn't ever brought to our attention, but now, we could go further than that and then be sued. And so there's no standard in this, that really that really gives us direction. And I mean, we sit on this policy committee. We're trying to do our best. I mean, we're in there working, and we've worked probably harder than anybody. And I know Mr. Gardner is looked into these, and supports it all. But we don't know what to do with this. It's a hot potato on that issue.
It is, and as you said, that's really a rhetorical question. But the last thing I will say is I'm not certain that Superintendent Spearman had all of the accurate information when she wrote her letter, as far as the existence of the policy administrative rule and complaint form in the school district. And I certainly don't, mean to speak for her, but that's what it appears to me, is that she did not have all of that accurate information.
Ms. Huddle?
Dr. Ross, I believe you answered Dr. Spearman's letter, correct? Do we have your permission to put that letter in the minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Gardner?
I, in that light, would like to make a motion.
Yes.
May I do that? Okay. I move that we send the following letter to Governor Henry McMaster and Superintendent Molly Spearman regarding a letter Superintendent Spearman sent to Trustee Blackburn Hines on February 8, 2022, in response to a request Ms. Blackburn Hines sent on school board letterhead to Governor McMaster and Superintendent Spearman on February 4th, 2022. And this is the letter. Dear Ms. Spearman, we have received a copy of the attached letter that Trustee Blackburn Hines sent you on February 4th, 2022 on our Board of Trustees letterhead and signed as in service to the District 5 community, Rebecca Blackburn Hines, Board Trustee. We are also in receipt of the attached response from you to Ms. Blackburn Hines dated February 8th, 2022. The letter from Ms. Blackburn Hines was never discussed nor agreed to by this board. In fact, most board members and our board chair were completely unaware that she was sending the letter and only became aware of her letter after your response was received. Per our board policy, BB, all powers of the board lie in its action as a body. Board members acting as individuals have no authority over personnel or school affairs, and board policy BDD, board members will function only as a board and not as individuals. In addition, the South Carolina School Boards Association Code of Ethics, to which all trustees have agreed and signed, states, as a school board member in South Carolina, I pledge my efforts to improve public education in my community and will solemnly try to take no individual action which would compromise the integrity of the board or administration. In addition, South Carolina law does not vest any authority in individual trustees to act on their own behalf of a school district. Ms. Blackburn Hines misrepresented our superintendent's comments regarding this matter. During discussion at our January 24th, 22 board meeting, Dr. Ross referenced the Island Trees School District versus PICO case and the need to follow our policy for review of library materials. This meeting occurred the day before the January 25th, 22 memorandum regarding best practices model policy for SBE library materials from Katie Nilges. In the Irmo News on February 4th, 22, Dr. Ross stated, quote, "The graphic sexual content caused me to ask the book to be pulled, but it was not. It was not supposed to be. The Supreme Court decided in 1982 in the Island Tree School District versus PICO case that local school boards may not remove books from school libraries simply because they dislike the ideas contained in the book. However, books can be removed when 2 review committees review the book and determine it is not educationally suitable for students." Ms. Blackburn Hines omitted this last sentence in her letter to you. To date, the only objection our superintendent has received from Ms. Blackburn Hines was made during November of 2021. It referenced a textbook which is also not in use in our district. She did not inform the rest of the board as to her objections. She took the liberty to demand the removal all on her own. Textbook approval, of course, is a completely different matter from that of a library book, and by law, the board, not an individual board member, has responsibility for textbook approval. It is disappointing that erroneous assertions by one board member led you to conclude that, quote, based on the timeline of events and the information provided to districts, it is clear District 5's board and administration failed to do its job by properly vetting the obscene materials in question, even after the state very publicly encouraged them to do so, close quote. We hope that by the timeline and facts presented in this letter, you now know that our board and administration followed our policy, one very similar to the model policy proposed on January 25th of 22, and the book questioned by Governor McMaster was never in our libraries and was not mentioned by parents at the January 24th, 2022 board meeting. Our administration, exactly like the one before it, followed our policies, ILJ and KEC. Our administration also followed the legal advice of our attorneys regarding district policy and Island Tree School District versus PICO. As such, our board and administration have properly followed policy, and we have done our job. You are always welcome to contact our board chair, Jan Hammond, and we are sure Superintendent Ross also would welcome questions. Our board does not support inappropriate content in our libraries, but we also recognize the need to follow policy and the law. We will certainly review our current policies in light of the South Carolina Department of Education's January 25th, 22 memorandum and recommended model policy. As previously noted, our current policies are already substantially similar to the model policy your department has proposed, including requiring a complaint form and committee review. In summary, our board fully supports the handling of this matter by our superintendent and administration. Sincerely, the trustees of School District 5 of Lexington and Richland Counties.
Is there a second to put that? Ms. Huddle. I will say that as our secretary, did you send that letter so that everybody saw that letter before tonight?
Yeah, I sent it yesterday, and it was vetted by our attorney, Ms. Andrea White, so we feel like it's
Okay.
clean and it has in it what we wanted to say.
Any other comments? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Moore.
I would like to just state that in your letter, you say that Trustee Hines broke policy by speaking as we, the board, and in her letter, she clearly states as one board trustee for School District 5 and as a parent of elementary school students. Nowhere in her letter does she ever state that she is speaking for the entire board, so I just want to make that record known.
Thank you.
Except the board,
Thank you.
the letterhead is the board's
Just a minute.
letterhead. It's not an individual's letterhead.
So then is your problem
Excuse
the
me.
letterhead, or is it that she sent the letter? Because that's two different.
Wait, I will call on you, but let me just say, please wait and be, you need to wait if she was finished. And so I'm going to go back to Ms. Moore. Yes, I'm sorry.
So then I restate my question. Is the problem that it's on letterhead, or is it that she sent a letter?
I'll answer that. The understanding is I checked with Ms. White, we have no policy that you can't use it. You're correct. But she also says by the fact, and I checked with a couple other lawyers that do school boards, not ours, that it's an assumption because usually if it is on the letterhead and it's signed as a trustee, rather than just I'm a parent, I happen to be a board member, but you write on your own. I don't think it would have had the same effect. But you're right, there's no policy, but that is something we maybe should look at because I think that's what brought some of this problem on. I really do.
I just think it's fair for the public and for our community to understand that with this letter that was just read by Trustee Gardner, that they understand the letter that was sent by Trustee Hines, where she clearly stated that she was doing it on behalf of herself.
And I can say, to back you up about that, when she called me and told me that she had sent the letter and gotten the response, she did tell me she did it as an individual. She told me that. So, yes, Ms. Gardner.
But I just wanted to state that the letter, this letter is in response to the letter, the official letterhead documented letter that Molly Spearman sent to our district reprimanding us and our superintendent. That was official. That was all official, and it wouldn't have happened if there wasn't she wouldn't have sent the letter if we hadn't inquired.
I understand that, but that's
But
not
if it
the
had
issue.
been done on a certain level of I'm inquiring as an individual, it may not have had as much weight
I
coming
understand.
back and reprimanding us if it had been done in a different light.
And to your point, that's true. Our letter, I want the board to know, because I support the letter. That letter is to let Superintendent Spearman know that we're just reiterating. Since I think had there been no consequence that was attacking the board's integrity or Dr. Ross's, that we were not doing our job, I don't think this would even be an issue. I myself when Ms. Hines told me about it, I told her that was fine. She certainly has the right to send a letter. That is not the issue. But I do think that our letter needs to go, and that was under council, that we need to send this letter simply because of it being in the state paper and making some type of impact. To me, these issues just hurt our students. I certainly support clarification on this, but right now, we're talking about this letter, and I support the letter in the sense because it is to Molly Spearman. It is not to Ms. Hines. It is to Ms. Spearman. Anybody else want to make a statement? Because let's have the vote. All those in favor of sending this letter to, as a board, to Superintendent Spearman? And that is 1, 2, 3, 4. And those opposed? 1, 2, 3. So it is a 4-3. All right. Now, that was under your, about instructional resource. Do you have anything else with that?
I have one last item on the superintendent's report, and it's going back to our mission, being focused on academic, social, and emotional growth and development. And I have made it a promise to the administration that we're in the fourth quarter, and I have felt like I have not done a good job of being focused on academic, social, and emotional growth and development. They have, and that's where our focus will return. We're in the fourth quarter, and we have less than 90 days, and the reality is 59.8% of our elementary school students in the 2nd through the 5th grade are not on target to meet their English language arts goals. 62.9 or 63% of our middle schoolers in the 6th through 8th grade are not on track to meet their English language arts expectations as defined by SC Ready. This is where our focus as an administration we will continue this focus, and I will direct the board to this each meeting from here to the end of the year to give progress on how we're doing. I believe literacy is the number one, especially informational literacy, is the number one skill that our students need to have because it transcends all skills in all areas. It is connected to life expectancy and career outcomes, earning outcomes. Informational literacy is life. And as a result, we're going to focus on literacy. So I've asked at each of our board members that we have an update on how we're doing, and at board meetings, I'm sorry, that we have an update on how we're doing. And so I'm glad to have from academics and administration, Ms. Anna Miller to come forward to take us through what we will report out. And I can see Ms. McCaskill here, Director of Elementary Education, on our literacy update. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. We're so excited to be in front of you tonight, and we're looking forward to coming back each month to give you some more good news and some more good reports on all the great things that we're doing with teaching and learning in School District 5. As Dr. Ross said, informational literacy is key. When you talk about literacy, wow, that is a lot of things. We have digital literacy, we have cultural literacy, we have financial literacy. All of these things, if you Google it, you'll come up with all kinds of literacy. We are going to focus on informational literacy, and so we wanted to give you at its most basic level, since tonight's our first real time coming before you with the instructional update. I want to give you at the most basic level that literacy is the ability to read, write, and communicate with others. We've looked at skills, literacy skills that students need. There are 8 critical literacy skills. They're before you, and we've narrowed that to 5 that we're going to focus on, K through 12 in our instructional practices. And so we've narrowed them to the 5 of the alphabetic code, phonemic awareness, and phonics, to comprehension, to research, vocabulary, and written expression. And I've asked our Director of Elementary Education, Ms. Tina McCaskill, to go through those for us.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. So I could probably talk forever on literacy. So you're talking to the person that has a pretty big passion, but I promised a couple of minutes, so that's what we'll do. First of all, if you look at the slides, I'm not going to read those to you. They're very basic, just definitions for you. But when you start talking about the alphabetic code, and you think about where we've been the past 2 years, and you think about, I met with reading coaches this morning, and just looking at data in Fastbridge, to know that our students in our kindergarten through second grade classes, that's an area that we have to now focus even more than ever before. So we've always had this balanced approach of really looking at phonemic awareness and phonics, as well as all the other shared reading, all the other pieces of balanced literacy. But our students have missed very explicit instruction on sounds and what sounds make up words. And that's having a huge impact overall. And so that's a new focus for us. Comprehension, if you think about experiences and background, that's where your comprehension comes from. We haven't gone anywhere for 2 years. We sit in our homes. The experiences are coming from television. I'm not sure that's the experiences we want our kids to have. So the comprehension is an area that we have to focus again on, and we have to help kids be able to connect the experiences that they have, or to provide the experiences in some form or fashion that they're missing, so that they can then comprehend text that maybe they really have no idea of what that is. When you talk about research, that's the positive in all of this. Because of all the instructional technology that you all have provided for us, that's an area that we can really dig into, and we've been able to dig into. Our kids have been able to utilize their technology to do research and to be able to learn how to take real-life experiences and real-life problems, research those, communicate that, prepare presentations, things like that. That's an area that is a positive for us. Vocabulary, one of Dr. Ross's favorite people, Dr. Danielle Dickey, is really great on looking at academic vocabulary and the need for being able to really consistently look at how do we start in kindergarten? What does an inference mean? It means the same thing in kindergarten as it means in 12th grade. There's no reason for us to take a really simple definition to kindergartners and make them learn a different definition in first grade, a different definition in second grade. If we start with the same definition and we just make sure that kids know that all the way through, that's going to help them academically to make sure that we're consistent. Written expression, that's that hand over hand handwriting. It's amazing how to learn to form the letter A, and you have to go top to bottom, and across. That formation leads to literacy and reading skills. And just to know how that formation, whether it's left to right, whether it's top to bottom, if we don't teach kids that formation correctly, and we don't have them in front of us to model that, that changes the trajectory of their reading throughout. So that, along with, as you all know, handwriting in and of itself, have you looked at handwriting lately? That gets a little difficult because what do? We type. So, but the handwriting, our language skills, our grammar skills, all of those are tied into that written expression piece for literacy. So, going forward throughout the next few months, you'll hear lots more information on that. And Ms. Miller, I think I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome.
I didn't go through the slides.
You're good. Thank you so much. You were too excited about everything you were saying, Ms. McCaskill. Thank you. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Dr. Robin Cox, our ELA coordinator, for helping us put this together and all that she's doing right now for literacy in our district. As Dr. Ross says, literacy is life. You can see at the bottom of the slides, we use some assessments. We're not just telling you what we're doing, but we are assessing our students with common formative assessments throughout the year, with Fastbridge, with MAP, as Dr. Ross showed you earlier, and we look forward to bringing those to you each month at the board meetings. And Dr. Ross, something I read today said, not only is literacy life, but literacy is also the language of opportunity. Amen. And we look forward to making these opportunities for every student in District 5. Thank you.
Any questions?
I was just curious, when a new student comes into our district, not like a kindergartner, but if we have a transfer student that, say, comes in third grade, what kind of assessment do we give them on literacy? And if they have any learning loss, what's the process?
So whenever a new student comes in, we have our reading coaches, our intervention teams. They'll give a running record. So we'll look at running records, which is where you sit beside a child, they read, you kind of look at what miscue analysis, what kinds of mistakes they may make. So we'll look at that first. That's an easy side-by-side we can get lots of information on and know where the child's at. Of course, we can give MAP at any time, so the NWEA, we can give that. There's a short assessment that we can give that can kind of give us some quick information if it's outside of the window of getting the longer assessment. We also have FastBridge, which is the screener that we do that is the phonemic awareness and phonics piece of that we can do. So we can gather, within a matter of a couple of days, we can gather some pretty detailed information about students. And then we have an MTSS process that looks at the child and says, okay, third grader comes in, they're reading at a second grade level, so they need some assistance. So then we go through the process of within our tier 1, which is the core instruction, what can teachers do within that classroom, but then also is there a need for the extra intervention, so like the pull-out time that we have, and we have that available to students as well.
Down here, Miss. Okay.
Is it, Dr. Ross, I address this to you, and you can direct it to whomever, but is there any way that the school district can strongly suggest to parents that after-school remedial reading be required of their student so that I don't want to use the word left behind because that's got bad connotation, but what I'm saying is that is there any way that we can insist as strongly as we can without, after school hours, and that we could provide funds to catch up, especially in this time? And I don't think that we're just talking about this one point in the continuum. I think, to use your whole child continuum, I'm talking about the time continuum, how we could use that time after school to really put some intensive effort on literacy, because I really believe, and this is my heart of hearts, I believe that a lot of the problems that we have in our schools are because of literacy problems. I mean, if we're going to bear on the negative, which we don't want to, but that's probably the stem cause of a lot of the problems.
So I would agree with you 100%. Research says that if students read 20 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day changes a child's trajectory as far as reading goes. And so if we can just encourage 20 minutes of, whether it's silent reading, but here's the problem with silent reading, are they really reading? So you have to follow up with questions. So asking questions about what's going on, reading with the child, those are the things that at home that honestly are going to help us most. So as far as providing the things after school hours, we do have some things that we're going to be talking about in the next month or so, some tutoring opportunities that are taking place, and bringing in some activities that parents can do and suggestions for parents at home to help with each individual type of reading and literacy activity. So I don't think that totally answers your question, but I think it's a beginning to it.
Nothing would totally answer it until all these children can read.
You and I will be in happy places, won't we?
And Mr. Lovelace, you're right about the need of that, but one thing teachers and staff fight is it is the home and parents. That they're not putting the same value that some homes put on it, and that hurts kids. Any other questions for them? I wanted to ask, did we have great success, or that we could measure from, after we had the year of COVID, and then this past summer, didn't we do reading camps? And were we able to assess that it was successful as we planned it to be, and then maybe that could be another thing we do?
So we have the state mandated summer reading camp for our third graders, and last year we had a lot of success. We had 70 students in that camp. 69 of the 70 were successful and went on to fourth grade. So we did have success in that camp, and of course the main point of that camp is just to make sure that we do not have any summer slide as well. That's the biggest piece of that, because in 5 weeks, we're not going to make huge gains, but if we can stop the summer slide, that's a big plus as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody? Okay.
Thank you so much, Ms. Miller and Ms. McCaskill. We're right. The research behind the 20 minutes a day is very promising for not only literacy, but life outcomes, what we see on standardized tests. And, but we know that in order to get those gains, we have to meet all of those needs that come before. And so this whole child continuum will make sure that when we get to the point of teaching these skills, that child is ready to learn. And it's really good to see elements of this come through with the NEST. And we know that when we provide that protection in the storm, that our students will shine in the rainbow of success. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Thank you.